Good evening. Happy to have you watching from wherever you are, especially our Barbadian audience. We welcome you to DLP TV, Honest Voices for the People. I'm Rosemary Ali. Joining me this evening for our program is Melissa Howard. She'll be my co-host.
Hi.
Welcome, Melissa.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Good to have you. And on my right, I have Felicia Dujon. As you know, she is the DLP spokesman on education. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, everyone.
And she's looking very festive because we're into the Christmas season.
Well, that too, and of course, today is International World Human Rights Day, and also the last day for 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. So we're here to honor that and also to celebrate that as well for advocacy in terms of that.
Do you do some work in that area? I'm sure, because
Well-
that is an area that should be of interest to you.
Yes, I am an advocate. I have been an advocate for the majority of my life, whether it's for children's rights, women's rights, rights of young persons, and it's really about ensuring that persons understand their human rights, their fundamental human rights. And so getting into the political space wasn't that it wasn't that challenging, because what politics is really about is advocacy on behalf of the people, and to ensure that those that have the authority and power do not infringe on those basic rights, which is some of what we tend to see with this administration. But we will not get into that as yet. But it's that kind of conversation that we need to have. What is human rights? What are fundamental rights? And to educate persons about it.
I'm glad she talked about that because I know education is one of your areas of interest.
Yes,
And it's a basic human right.
it is.
So I'd like to hear some of your views of what's happening in Barbados in education. We've been very busy this last term.
I think what is important is that we have to recognize that education is the most important pillar of any society. In particular in Barbados, where we have had very good history in terms of our education system. But as we've seen very lately, that there is a transition, and it's a very scary transition because we're seeing what the outcomes are. We're seeing what the research is showing us about our young persons not having the ability to read or function adequately in various spaces. So it's very important that if we are to speak of human rights, or if we are to speak of children's rights, that we understand that children need to be in an environment which is safe and conducive for learning. And these are some of the factors that we do not have with this administration, that we have to continue to advocate, agitate, and of course have those kinds of interventions for our young persons. Education is dear to my heart. I believe that if we have to talk about Felicia Dujon, we can't keep out the space that I was born and raised in St. Lucia, but I spent the majority of my academic life in Barbados. And I believe Barbados gave me the structure in terms of how you want to guide your work. And of course, it really reinforced my advocacy and my advocacy work. So it's not only that you want to learn and be part, but you also have to contribute to your society. And part of our contributions, not only as academics, but to ensure that everyone's rights are not infringed upon, but at the same time, we educate persons about those fundamental rights.
Melissa, you have any?
Yes, it's the Christmas season. Could you tell us what life was growing up in St. Lucia, Christmas time for you?
Well, St. Lucia is very much like any Caribbean island. As you know, I would see myself as a CARICOM person because I grew up in St. Lucia. I studied in Barbados, living in Barbados, and also studied in Jamaica. And Christmas is very much like every Christmas in every Caribbean island. We have our black cake. We have, the usual strong rum here, and I don't drink, but it's a very festive time. But also what is very interesting is that it's a time where you get to see your family members.
Yes.
It is a time where everyone come home and touch base and ensure that everybody makes that kind of connection. So traditionally, Christmas in Barbados and Christmas in St. Lucia, it's not much of a difference because we do share the same cultures. And so it would be very much like how we have Christmas here. the festivals, the lights, the family gathering, and of course going to church on a Christmas Eve. And it's also my birthday month, so I look forward. I look forward to that time as well. So it's one of the most. I think that is the time people take to reflect on what has transpired for the entire year. So there's a lot of introspective that is occurring around that time as well. So it's and I think we have to be very, very mindful that for this year we have had a lot of tragedies happening in this country. A lot of families have lost family members for various matters, whether it's for violence, whether it's for other areas, health concerns. And so this Christmas we really have to look out for each other. We have to really go out to the communities and touch the hearts of people.
Yes, it's the season of giving. Do you have any plans of getting into the community and going out there and giving back to the less fortunate for Christmas season?
Well, there are two ways that we can look at that. I tend to want to do things in the background. I'm more of that kind of person. So we do work with other organizations. Of course, the party would be working with the constituents as well. And so at that time, it's really trying to help everyone with that play up in hand. And there are times that it may not be something that is structured. It could be just someone that you meet at the supermarket, which we see quite a lot happening very lately, where you see people going in and trying to make for that little dollar, extra dollar. So is it a time that we, as I said before, we really have to look out for each other. It's not the kinds of Christmas that we had before. It's a very challenging time, but we have to be there. Be our brother's keeper, be our sister's keeper at these trying times.
I'm glad you segued into Christmas, but I want to get back into your spokesperson role. But before I do that, I'm sure you talked about you do a lot of advocacy work in the communities, and I'm sure you don't wait until Christmas. This is a year-long thing that you try to help in the various communities.
Yes, as I said before, these are not things that. So advocacy can be structured where you have projects that you work on and work with other persons. So my work may not necessarily just be Barbados, it could be the entire region, and it could be global as well, based upon whatever organizations that you're working with, human rights organizations, children's rights, women's groups. And there are cases where they may have an emergency and you have to step in. So in such a case, for an advocate, you don't get much time for yourself because you're always on call and you do not know when you have to be reached out on certain matters. So it's important that we look at those things and see why these kinds of advocacy is important, because many people do not have the kinds of courage that others have. So we have to be the voice of the voiceless. We have to be those that will be out there and that are resilient and fearless in some cases, because there are times it will become challenging to stand up for the rights of other persons. But what is very important is that I always say to myself that if you stand on behalf of God, then you shouldn't fear anything. So the reality is that we tend to do as much as we can every year, every day when it's possible, because the challenges are there, and it's really about being there at the time that is needed.
Now, I know that you have been talking about the many issues that confront us in education. And one of the ones I want really to focus on is the challenge children appear to have with reading, especially in the primary schools. Is this something that you see, and what would be your solution if you were Minister of Education tomorrow? What would be your solution to tackle this very serious problem in our schools?
I think that one of the things that the Democratic Labour Party has done is to advise the Minister of Education to have a national reading policy. The policy is there. So we need to advocate it. We need to trigger it. We need to ensure that it's implemented. And this is one of the things that this government is failing to do, implementation, and ensuring that this follow through, that there's monitoring and evaluation of any program that they implement. So a national policy on reading would help, and also to ensure that we have reading teachers. I think specialized reading teachers are very important because what we're seeing in our education system, we have teachers that are qualified to teach in various areas. So you may have maths and social studies, but at the same time, they're not specialized in reading. And I think it's very important that the Ministry of Education take those matters very seriously because you need to read to do math. You need to read for you to go on your devices. A very simple example, you see children, they play all those video games, whether it's Roblox, whatever that it is. They need to read because if you can't read, then you wouldn't know how to play those games. So it's very important that we teach children the fundamentals of reading and why it's important because reading is a skill that you will have to have for the rest of your life. It's just like swimming or anything else. It's a life skill. And I think we need to start from the basics, from the very early childhood, start teaching the basics, ensuring that children have equal access to it. But another part of it is to ensure that parents are on board. Because we take it for granted that every household has someone that can guide the child academically. And I think these are some of the matters that the Ministry of Education is looking into to provide those kind of parental intervention. Because it would be very strange that you give students your homework to do and they can't do it. Their maths may not be your math.
Yes.
So a lot of things have changed in terms of the curriculum over the decades, and we need to look at that, and we need to look at the transition and how we can have the kinds of intervention for our students. Because one of the things that is very important is the data. What the data is showing us in terms of when students leave various schools at the level that they're at. And if the research is telling us that in the last 5 years, 10 years, we're seeing a repetitive cycle of students not having the kind of prerequisites for higher education. And I think that's a detriment to them. And we cannot, as citizens, as conscious beings, allow our citizens to go through that process without having the kind of intervention that is needed. So I think reading is and all other areas, not just reading, but all other areas. But we know that reading really is what allows the person to have critical thinking and to be able to analyze not only the academics, but individuals yourself. How do you analyze your situations that you are? How do you think about it? How do you rationalize about it? So all of those matters are very important. I think the ministry has to go back to the drawing board because the Democratic Labour Party, we had all of those policies already. And it worked. There was a very pragmatic approach to it. So trying to remove it or trying not to implement it is at a detriment to our citizens. And I think they need to reevaluate it. And if there's anything else, as I said before, the Democratic Labour Party, we do have an education commission and we are looking into those matters. But I think one of the first things that we can do is have a reading policy for the entire country, so that every child, every citizen has those kinds of prerequisites for them.
As I sat here and I listened to you talking about the DLP having policies in place, I remember, I think it was back in the 70s, when the free textbook scheme was introduced. Somebody, maybe like Dr. Derek Allen, could better speak to its implementation. But I remember as a child in a household where my parents had 3 of us going to school, 4 of us going to school at the same time. The implementation of that textbook scheme was very important to working class households like the ones in which I grew up. My father no longer had to be running all over the place trying to get books for us. You pay, I can't remember how much money it was at the time, but that textbook scheme really helped working class families, and it was implemented by the DLP.
And we have always done that because we think about people first before anything else. We think about citizens before anything else. And so when you touch those lives, you can see how it impacts the entire family. And I think it is something that we need to also look at for primary school as well. Why just keep it to secondary school? Primary school textbooks are just expensive as secondary school students. So these are some of the things that we need to look at. I remember that it was a $100 voucher. I don't know what is happening with that again, implementation with this administration. So these are the kinds of programs that we need, policies that we need. Why? Because it relates to the average Barbadian. If we are going to say that we need our citizens to be educated, we have to think about the textbooks. We have to think about how are they going to get any meals, which is what the DLP has always done. We've always put people first before friends and everything else. I'm just sliding that in. But the reality is that these are some of the kinds of conscious behaviors, conscious conduct that we'd like when it comes to policies, that we have to put the people at the center of those policies so that it can have the kind of impact that it has. It has the kinds of good consequences that it has.
Yeah. Okay. All right. As an educator, you have hands-on experience with what goes on in the classrooms. Could you tell us how online teaching has impacted the students?
I believe that what online teaching has done over the years is to show us what we can improve on, and also how we can adapt our curriculum in some cases. Because we notice that it works in one way. So there are advantages to online learning because some students may feel comfortable in that space. But then we look at our societies, not every child has access to the internet, not every child has an environment which is conducive for learning. And I think this is one of the things that we all learned. If many parents remember during COVID, you're online with your child and you're watching other families as well. And you understand that your home may not have been that conducive for learning because perhaps there's a chicken in the background, there's something happening and it distracts the child.
Yeah.
So all of these things, I think the research has shown the benefits of online learning, but also the disadvantages of online learning. Because there's some students within our society, some families within our societies that were disadvantaged. And we're actually seeing it now with the Grantley Adams School.
That has been online.
That has been
What's
online.
happening there?
And these are some of the matters that I think that we need to discuss openly and see what is some of the ways that we can actually help those students. One of the things we take for granted, we believe that every child has a device that can work and they can be able to go online and do their work. But we've seen what has happened. We've seen students, sometimes they log in and we don't see them. Sometimes they may be there, but they're not actually being part or engaging or participating in the classes. So all of those matters, I think it's very important that one of the things that the ministry can do, what I would recommend, is to take some kind of research and see what has happened with those students that have been out of school face-to-face for an entire term. And these are students that will be sitting CXC very soon. These are students that may have to be selecting these subjects very soon. These are students that was the first time, the first term at Grantley Adams.
Yeah.
So some of them may not even have the time to transition from primary school to secondary school as yet. So these are some of the matters I think we need to really reflect upon and to ensure that the ministry understands that it's actually a detriment to the students. But what is more important, that we need to know what are the real matters at the Grantley Adams School. Because I visited the school on Sunday. And I would like the chairman to update us on this matter because I did a walkthrough at the school. And I did experience some of the claims that the students and teachers were making. So I would like to know from the chairman and from the ministry how soon they plan to alleviate those problems. Because what would happen is that we're closed for only 2 weeks. So we would like parents to know very early, inform parents very early, our students going to be returning to the schools. Are they going to do another term online? And what are some of the effects of that would have on our students? So I'm putting this charge to the Ministry of Education as well as the chairman of the school branch.
And one of the, I want to ask this question just before we wrap up. One of the concerns I have is how would you go about testing to see how this term of online, what about the PTA? How would you go testing through the PTA to see how the students did? How would it be done?
Well, you have to look at the curriculum itself and see what was required to be covered within that period of time. And of course, you may want to, one of the concerns of that, because remember, it's the entire school. It's not just various classes.
Right.
So you'd want to see those that just entered the school from primary school and see their level. Are they adapting to high school, secondary school level now, because it's, you know, some of the work that may be a little tedious for them, but also you want to look at the other the students, the continuing students there, and see how they are managing the workload that they have online. We know some of them have to submit SBAs. How are they adapting to that? So the research component is very important in terms of that. And also, we'd want to, so you would test, the school would be able to test to see where exactly the student is at this moment, and also what kinds of intervention. Do they need intervention in math? Do they need intervention in English or sciences? And of course, it's very difficult, because if you're doing sciences, you'd want to be, in some cases, not only theoretical, it has to be practical. So you'd want to look at that as well. So there's a number of challenges, and I'm hoping that the Ministry of Education does not forget the students at the Grantley Adams and just decide, okay, we're just going to put them back into the physical space without taking into consideration what has happened from the first term.
Okay.
So that is one part of it, and the other part is the teachers. How are the teachers coping being online? Because they have their lives as well. They are at home and they're trying to teach at home. So all of those matters, I think it's important. But most importantly, I think the ministry has to take responsibility for the work that they have been doing, the inefficiencies that they've been doing. Because as we've seen for this term, every week a school had to be shut down. Every week. And so that made it place parents again at a disadvantage, because they have to work, they have to find provisions for their children.
I know that this is one of your passions, but I want you to tell me, as we wrap up now in 30 seconds, what are you doing for Christmas? Tell me.
Didn't expect that question.
What do you do?
Well, first of all, we have a social, the Democratic Labour Party has a social, so
Good.
we'll be meeting everyone, and we're hoping all our comrades do come out. It's our social, do come out and support the activities of the party. And most importantly, it's going to be on the 17th. We'll be circulating there. I will be there. I have a dress already, so I will be there.
Good.
And of course, we want to ensure that we attend the other branch functions as well, because all the other branches will be having the activities. So I will be ensuring that I do attend, and of course, spending time with family. Some family members will be visiting.
Going
So
to mass, I'm sure.
yes, of course. Yes, so there's a number of activities, but I think what is very important, as I'm going to wrap up, is that we continue to reach out to others, keep an eye on this government. We're not going to let down, even though it's Christmas, but we want to ensure that everyone, please stay safe during this holiday season.
Thank you very much, Felicia, as usual, on point. Thank you once again, and happy holidays
Thank
to
you
you
as well.
and your family, because I may not see you before the holidays.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that was Felicia Dujan talking about education. We know she's on top of, that's a matter that she is always on top of. Even during the holidays, she'll be keeping an eye on that issue at the Grantley Adams Memorial School and what's happening to those children there. And we're back now again with somebody new, Mr. Nathaniel Boyce. Nathaniel, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Your spokesperson. What's your area?
So my area is industry, innovation, science, and technology.
I'm glad to hear about that, because we were just talking education. I'm sure you were listening.
Of course.
And what are some of the things that you would like to see in this area, innovation, technology? This is the area that you are interested in.
Yes, well, I was listening to Felicia and she spoke about schools and the situation, obviously, especially when since COVID, and we were forced into a situation using the technology. We had teachers and students, parents who were disadvantaged in that they didn't have resources in terms of a laptop, connectivity, and obviously through that period, the ministry did try to do their part in terms of delivering some resources, but we still have some children, even up to now, who are, say, so-called off the grid. They don't have access to Google Classroom, and that's where normally teachers would post work for them. Some homes don't have connectivity, some homes don't have any electricity. And if we're looking at going forward in terms of having these different technologies also incorporated in schools, and we don't have children who have access to them, I mean, we always might have personal students who are disadvantaged. Even the situation probably with Grantley Adams School, there's some children who don't have devices.
And we know this,
Yeah.
some of that we know.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's happening with these children?
Well,
Do you know?
well, I can tell you that efforts normally are made to see if you can supply some of these students with the relevant resources, but at present, some schools, they don't have the luxury of having extra devices, so those children are not online. I'm sure if you ask for some teachers still use it, the Google Classroom. You could tell you that they have children, even recently, even to today, a parent would have said to me in terms of they're not in the classroom, they don't have no idea what's happening, what's not, and I heard the PTA mention PTA too. Well, at my school, I guess, functions in the sense that we try our best to see how well we can then ask the ITCs how they can help that individual, right? Obviously, because we're pushing science and technology through the island, and we're not fully ready because we're not equipping the schools and obviously the children if they don't have basically resources for this. I have the portfolio of industry, and we had the major industries such as the agriculture, tourism, which is our major industry. And we moved from sugarcane. We still have it, but we moved sugarcane where we go into crop fruits division. And that's the area too, I believe, in the agriculture, first responsible for agriculture. This will speak about where we are not pushing enough for individuals and helping to push for us to be more sustainable. And in terms of going forward to my one, seeing that what's happening in the bigger picture in the world, we see that there may be war and terrorism, we don't know. And we have a situation whereby we need to be self-sufficient in that. Suppose something happen, we should be able to feed ourselves. And there's also a market area where we can have pushing, I normally will advocate to some of the youth in terms of pushing, in terms of getting a little piece of land and either growing something, or even animal husbandry where like chickens. We have a situation where we know food, have a little situation of food shortage in terms of say chickens, they don't have enough chicken, but you can get into these simple little programs, in communities to pushing study, instead of just having individuals relying on government to just give them and also give them something. You can put them in a position where they can help themselves. Also in terms of industries, the also financial services, we have the insurance companies, other financial, international financial services. Those are three that they'll be going forward now, always in terms of setting a goal in the future, where we're looking at also agro-tourism. That is something too we can push for. But sciences where, I remember Paul had mentioned one time, where we can develop, have labs, pharmaceutical companies here, actually manufacturing here in Ireland, which will create jobs and also too, for us going forward to helping us be more self-sufficient, right? So as I look at in terms of my portfolio, these things stand one another, right? So we have these different industries, obviously, that we're trying to push. Some, for instance, like the tourism, our major industry, we know we're still trying to play catch up. We have other Caribbean islands who are process since COVID, and we're still trying to catch up in numbers. So I believe that we need to push a little harder, and obviously going forward, in the future things can happen. It's just a matter of, I guess, just sitting down and realizing what needs to be done.
Sure. You're a teacher. Could you tell us what are your thoughts about the robotics, the AI, and the coding that links to your science innovation portfolio? What are your thoughts of these things being implemented into the schools?
Well, we do have, we call digital literacy, and robotics coding is, I can say to you, is, well, I can speak for some schools in that, how is it being taught? We do have kits where the children, the ITC normally, or another teacher who have had the training, is supposed to teach the children in terms of using these kits in terms of robotics and coding. We have a situation where these are supposed to assist the children, obviously getting ready for going forward into a technological age.
Mhm.
Sometimes we have challenges in schools, for instance, where sometimes it's not taught because sometimes it's substitution. Sometimes teachers may have to hold a class, so which means that class, even science, I teach degree science. Sometimes you are faced with having to go to class, maybe teachers out. So sometimes children don't get the opportunity, whereby obviously the exposure. To me, a little bit more can be done in terms of having actually the expertise persons coming into these schools. Obviously, they're a person attached to various organizations that have a lot bit more experience and exposure
Mhm.
to work with some children. It's not my forte in terms of say ITC. I don't want to discredit that role, but there can be some challenges because sometimes a person may not be a trained ITC, but they're certainly positioned to work with students. I see it's a good idea to going forward because that's the way how we're going in terms of artificial intelligence. I believe persons who are normally following on the world scene in terms of AI with Elon Musk. He has robots that actually they are, well, I think they're still, they have not been put to person and stuff, but they've seen what they can do home-wise in terms of maybe make you some tea. I think I saw a situation too at a restaurant where the whole restaurant, I think, is fully robotized, where you have just robots basically serving, mixing, chef work, all that. This was happening.
Do you think that we are really ready for this? I know people say it's something that Barbados has to get into,
So,
but do you think that we have the foundational, I can't find the word, the foundation in our education system that we can really build on this STEM type of learning?
I would say not at the moment. I've had the chance to be exposed to one to STEM workshops now with STEAM, because including the arts and those things. And although we can have some simple materials, for instance, I can give you this fly, that stick, a few other things, and ask you to create a robot. And my thinking is going to be different to yours, right? And in terms of, is mine going to work or is yours going to work? Right? That's just simple stuff, right? But in terms of if we are trying now to play catch up, we still have a lot of foundation to put in place, especially in terms of if we are looking to base modernize. It makes life a lot easier, right? But still, if we don't have certain things in place, even if we're looking at in terms of having a cashless society where we have individuals sort of disadvantage, right? Especially those elderly, you don't want to have to basically exclude anybody. And it's those persons who are normally vulnerable that will be excluded, right? And we had a situation obviously with cyber attacks where I would have also mentioned, and I said it's alleged that 29 of the agencies have had cyber attacks, and there was not a response from the minister as it relates to if this is true or not. But I can tell you I've seen emails where BRA, for instance, would have sent out correspondence, letting persons know the name, the proof of address, financial information, digital ID, all those things are on the dark web and up for sale. And obviously a situation that even having your personal like health information on a card, a digital card that persons can have access to, right? Because we still, the mere fact that we have been hacked and have been continue to be hacked, we don't have certain protocols, or I don't want to say that they are personnel, but sometimes you might need outside help, private persons from private companies coming in to working with the government, because it's something obviously going forward you have to be tested, all right? And to make sure that what happens is I'm not saying that you may not get that gifted person that may be able to infiltrate and get into your, but we're trying to think, but sometimes we have to take steps before we can get to where we want.
Okay, let's get a little personal right now. Could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and growing up in Barbados?
Yes, I come from British Hill. I was born and raised in British Hill. I'm a British Hill boy, and I've seen some changes. Like my gap I came from, maybe in Wasteland, and I remember it was just a cart road, nothing, only a few houses back in there. My grandparents, we kept in living country, but we had
You
pigs.
look too very young to be talking about grandparents and having pigs and all this sort of
Yes,
thing.
pigs, chickens, ducks. We had sheep. The only thing I don't think we had at that time was probably a cow. I milked a goat, and I remember helping my grandma when she cut the chicken head, and you put it in a bucket, hot water, and all those things. I saw how pigs are killed, so that was an extra income, and those things I normally tell some fellas that, in my community, that these are things you can still get into. This is what helped them put some money in their pockets. And I've seen some transformation in the community. I come from St. Michael South, and where, to me, there's lots more that can be done. All right, I went to St. Paul's Primary School, then on to Lodge and University. I'm also an athlete, and I can let you know too that I was pretty fast. I think my time was fast and over that at one point in time.
Wow.
Yes. So that's me. I have a son. I'm married. So within 10 years, and I recently have started to help persons. I never thought I would really got into this deep into it, because sometimes it's a calling, and sometimes you have to answer it. You can't always ignore. I've started up a little charity named Youth on Call that I normally would get assistance with sometimes. So I'm trying to help individuals, and especially at this time. I know you mentioned in terms of Christmas time what you'll be doing, but yes, I'll be engaging in some of the events at party level, but also to try to take some cheer, give something out to the community and help a few persons, because it's needed. It's really hard here for lots of individuals.
Yes.
Really hard. They're not saying anything. They're not making noise. I know a lot of people may be scared, but they do. When you speak to them one-on-one, they need help.
Now, that's one of the things I notice about Barbadians. I find a lot of, I have to say, us are having challenges, but many people don't want to talk about the challenge publicly.
Yeah.
Sure.
If it's a one-on-one, they will tell me, yes, I'm really struggling with this or struggling with that. But publicly, they don't want to be identified as saying that they're facing difficulties. But I'm glad to hear that you are helping in your community, in your area, Britain, so around there where you've come from. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, don't be nervous, just relax and talk to me. How you plan to spend this Christmas? What are you going to do? What do you like to eat? What do you like? What's your typical Christmas meal? What do you like to eat Christmas Day?
Before, when I lived with my grandparents, I didn't have to cook, and meals is also women, so they cook, and I enjoy from the chicken, turkey, ham, pork. I don't really want to publicize something. I don't like to eat ham, but so the pudding, the cake, all those things, bread cake, person. But for me nowadays, is I spend it, I say quietly in terms of I'm more in terms of giving. I normally find myself giving more to persons who are obviously in need, and sometimes you get a satisfaction out of that. On Christmas Day, I may visit a few persons in the community, just to say hello or whatever. Have one, two little just get to a few persons, because sometimes a surprise, some person they're not expecting is something that they may need. Right, so I will spend some at home. I still spend at home because sometimes you get proud that home a lot. But I will still see a few people, and that's pretty some sort of satisfaction, and also to participate in some events too at the party we have.
Before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you something that you said earlier when you were talking about agribusiness. Earlier, I was having a conversation with someone else, and I was talking about government having meaningful programs for young people, things that they would be interested in. And I was told that yes, the programs are there, but young people don't seem to be looking at TikTok. Do you think that there are areas in the agribusiness field that young people could be attracted to if we have the right mix of ingredients to reach them?
Of course, As reason as relates to agribusiness, where we're using the obviously you may have an area and you may have you're growing different crops because obviously even in terms of agritourism, where persons are coming from overseas to see what you're doing, they even have a glow restaurant servers and see them across your provisions that you're growing. You may do a dish, So all of this is how you're marketed. There are persons who are interested in the time. A few individuals will ask in terms of how you go getting a piece of land to to work in, right? I'm worried because even at my school, I have a little project there we're doing. I have some cans. I've been given some donations. So I have some sweet potato, but I saw recently going back, it used to be set up where instead of sweet potatoes, you put them in the ground. You can get some sacks.
Yes.
Put the salt, put the roots in there, and they're growing and they're content in there. So you don't have to worry about certain things happening. So in terms of presentation to going forward with young people working on because they have some better ideas to creativity, So in terms of talk to them. So that's how you market put forward your ideas and then put them in an environment where they can work. They said nothing is wrong with whereas when COVID, one of the things that we needed was food.
Yeah.
Food that we found ourselves in myself, remember, I went to a farmer's house. So it was like you doing those. I think your farmer thought it was doing me wrong, and you made a call and you said, okay, I heard you have such and such, and come prepared now shortly to get some food.
Well, I'm glad to hear you talk about food, and I really want to have you back again because we need to talk more about this agribusiness. Because you talk about those sweet potatoes growing in sacks, and I remember seeing, I think it was paper being made of banana stems. After the bananas were cut down, they used the trunk of the banana to make the different things. And just only yesterday was looking and saw the video of a man making baskets in Jamaica, and that was a part of his agri-tourism thing right on the street, and he talked about how tourists would come by and learn to. So yes, so it was really, really good talking to you. I really enjoyed meeting you and hearing about your life in Britain Hill when you were growing up.
Thank you very much.
So hope to see you again sometime soon.
No problem. Thank you too.
An honest voice for the people. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Now we make another transition. We have opposition leader Ralph Thorne and Paul Gibson. I can't remember, Paul will remind me because I often forget, but I'm glad he's here tonight because I have a lot of questions coming in here on WhatsApp for him. Welcome, gentlemen. You're looking so handsome. Everybody's ready for the holidays.
Oh, yeah.
You're ready for the holidays too, I'm sure.
Yes. My favorite time of year.
Good. I was watching you in Parliament earlier this evening. As usual, making your voice for the people.
An honest voice for the people.
An honest voice
Yes.
for the people of
Yes.
Barbados.
Thank you very much.
And I really wanted to ask you because something that you spoke about really struck me and made me think of something I'd never thought about. The monies, for want of a better word, or the assistance.
Yes.
Tourism operators have been given over the last forever. They've been given this, always given support.
Yes. Concessions, hundreds of millions of dollars worth.
Is there a way that we can find out, say, the last 10 years, the last 16, the last 20, how much concessions government has given to this sector? And what concerns me about it is because the experience that we went through COVID. When there were no planes flying, nobody was coming. When you look at the money that is thrown into tourism, is it really worth it when we consider that it could be another pandemic in the next 10 years?
You don't want to discredit an entire sector. You don't want to accuse them of not having made a contribution, but yours is a valid question. Whether the contribution that they have made socially and financially to the country, whether it is worth the amount that we have given them, we, the people, through the government, have given them in terms of concessions. Now, it is quite possible to quantify the concessions because the concessions are based on declarations made by the sector. In other words, the sector says, or hotelier says, look, I spent $100,000 in renovations, and he is entitled to have that renovation credited to him. Well, he's entitled, he gets a concession from government based on what he has declared. In other words, government is not going to charge him taxation based on the cost of the renovations. He's improving his property. What we did in Parliament today, what the government went to do, the government went to amend legislation which gives concessions for villas, for the construction of villas, and they have added to that the renovation. So before you could get a concession for construction, and we're really tired of them not remembering everything, you could get you could get a concession for construction and furnishing. So a chap owns a hotel and he buys a piece of art, or he buys, as I said in Parliament, a saucepan. He can get a concession based on what that costs him. Yeah. This government has now added to that renovations. So you have a villa, 10, 15 years you've had that villa. If you want to renovate it, you can get a concession for the cost of renovations. Yeah. So your bills, your costs, what you owe government becomes less as a result of the work you're doing, as a result of the money you're spending. Now, when you have a villa, Rose, you have made lots of money on that villa. You're not going to keep a villa for 10, 15 years unless you're making money. And if you sell it, there's some villas, a former Minister of Tourism told us last night, I don't mind saying this. He said some of the most expensive property in the Western Hemisphere is located right here in Barbados. A lot of these beachfront villas are very, very expensive properties. And the point I made in Parliament today is that they place it, or they make the point that it is so out of the reach of Barbadians that they express it in US dollars. They don't even bother to express a sale price in local dollars because they know that they're not talking to us. They're talking to people like themselves, other foreign people who have the wherewithal and who will purchase a property for 20 million US dollars sometimes. So that was a part of the business in Parliament today, to grant concessions, as I say, to people who are already wealthy. And I made the comparison, if you're going to grant concessions to wealthy people, why not similarly assist the fisher folk? Yes. And I made the point that government promised the fisher folk, the vendors, $1,500. I am sure that they had promised them $1,500 for 3 months, September, October, November. They have now come back and said it is a one-off payment, $1,500. They're paying the boat owners, Mr. Ford said, for 3 months. They're paying the captains for 3 months, 1,000 or 1,500. Yes, 1,500 for 3 months. But for some reason, Rose and Melissa, they're paying the vendors only 1 month. Why the disparity? I mean, it is the vendors who sell the fish anyhow. So why treat the vendors with that disparity? So that was, largely speaking, the business in Parliament. You will ask, you want to say something, you want to ask me another question so that this wouldn't become a soliloquy.
Yes.
So
Yes,
I'll come back
I
to
did,
that.
but I will go hand over to Melissa because she may have something to ask.
And this question is for Paul. All right, you are the spokesperson for environment. Could you tell us how the reefs were damaged from the storm barrel?
Yes, well, we've been having a challenge in Barbados now where not only are we, well, going back from the days of COVID, where we had ships parked on the reefs, destroying, and I think it was racked up to like billions of dollars of damage, for which we've never received a penny, for what I was told. Not only do we have a situation where the hotels along the west and south coast are extending groins into the water and changing the entire topography of Barbados, and thereby changing the reef structure and so on. But we have the other factor, which we call El Nino, which is the increase of the water temperature by 1.5 degrees Celsius. Now that singular thing has pretty much obliterated most of the critical reefs in Barbados. I shared on another forum where as a boy I would go swimming, and I could tell you every reef, the sea anemone, the purples, the greens, the most beautiful colors you could ever see underwater, right? And I remember going back as a teenager, and when I swam out and looked, those beautiful reefs with all the pot fish and parrotfish and so on, a lot of them were dead. They were just like white coral. And
bleaching, I think.
they were just bleaching, yeah, because they were bleached because of the not only the 1.5 degree temperature increase, but all of the pesticides and everything is being washed into the water from land. So the reef system in Barbados has been significantly compromised by man-made, and also by nature. And it is something that we need to address. The Coastal Zone Unit had some initiatives where they were using BRC wire, attaching small pieces of coral to it so that it would grow over a 3 to 6 month period.
How successful was that, you know?
It is in its very embryonic stages. They were looking at, they were experimenting with different models, the BRC wire, the table method, and different things to get to see what gives the best response. And they do it in 20 to 40 feet of water. And then they would harvest that coral and go and then place it back in these locations where coral was growing, with the aim of resurrecting the coral reefs across Barbados. Some money really needs to be spent in that area. We just got a big loan again to the coastal unit to invest in resurrecting our reefs. Now, what comes with a healthy reef are more fish, better sea life. You get cleaner water. It's a more attractive tourism product for things like diving and so on. We have the Starboard Nikita that we were talking about last night, opposition leader, where we were looking at different sites where you can create reefs by sinking ships and this kind of thing. So to your question, the state of our reefs is not good. The state is not good. And I think that we need to, with all of the money that is being borrowed, and I don't mean to harp on the amount of money being borrowed, because we still need 324 million to finish the year, but we need to really consider what we're going to do to utilize that money in a real way, not just to borrow the money, but to really use it to lift the bar. Because when water rises, all ships rise, and we need to look at reefs and get that.
I'm glad you talked about the reefs, because the reefs, I understand, are very important in protecting our coasts. Correct. And this issue of global warming, I was watching something about the island of Kiribati and of Vanuatu.
Yes.
These places are really sinking under the sea, and then we are going to be faced with environmental migrants.
Yes.
But to come back to Barbados, the damage that has been done to our reefs, and you say that efforts are being made now to restore the reefs. But what about the building along the coast that people are complaining about? The dropping of these, for want of a better word, these big rocks that people see, you know, and how they're really affecting the coast going that way.
Going north.
Yes. What do you think would be a good solution to protecting our coastline, but still having that access to beaches that people are complaining that these man-made structures are not only affecting people walking the beach, but affecting sea life, turtles.
Yeah. One of the things that I always remember my grandfather telling me, he said to me, Paul, when your uncle was a little boy, I would walk him from Pile Bay to Spike Stump on the beach. Could you imagine that? He said he would walk in from Pile Bay all the way up in low tide, and then take the bus back down to the Black Rock area. The point is that over the years, persons have become very selfish. Persons with means and so on are looking after their own interests. And they're not looking after the interests of the average Barbadian, where the average Barbadian can participate in the beach and that kind of thing. So they've been pushing their boundary walls out to the shoreline. They've been planting trees to extend the shoreline, to give themselves more space, more property.
Yeah.
They have been putting groins into the water so that when the wave comes over the groin, it deposits more sand so they get a bigger beach for themselves. But what happens with that? It changes the literal topography of the coastline, south, north, all the way to St. Peter. And I remember only a couple of weeks ago, after the large hurricane that we had that destroyed all those boats, which Hurricane Beryl, we saw the depletion of the west coast at Paynes Bay. I remember going there and I could not believe that I saw structures that were dug up because of Beryl under the ground at Paynes Bay. It was so horrible. And people lost their walls and so on. The sad thing about this is this. Persons just decide, well, look, I don't want my walls to be broken down anymore, so I will do something preventative. So they're putting these massive boulders on the beach where we walk, and so tourists, locals, visitors, people that are who are disabled are no longer able to move freely across the beach because of these massive boulders.
Is this something that concerns you as a spokesman on the environment?
It really does, so much so that I called some of the authorities and asked the question, did you give permission for these massive boulders to be here? And one particular department said to me, yeah, we did not give permission. And we did inform the persons that were putting these massive boulders, these engineers, that they're really not supposed to go there. And we reported this to Town and Country Planning. And they said to me, that's all we can do. So when the person that makes the final decision as to what happens on a beach in terms of putting boulders and digging the beach up or changing its topography and its structure and so on, is not getting involved and saying, no, you cannot do that, and enforcing the laws, then persons with wealth and who are well-to-do can do what they want.
But is this really happening in Barbados? That which ministry would be responsible for telling me, you have to put those boulders down, you gotta take them out, and you have X time to remove them?
Right. So that would be Town and Country Planning.
And who's the minister responsible?
Well, we know the minister is.
The minister.
Right? We know the minister is.
But before it goes to town planning,
coastal zone unit. So I know that coastal zone unit.
they're the professionals.
They're the professionals. They advise the government, listen, that person needs to take up those stones. It is destroying the beach.
Okay.
They do their job.
Okay.
When it goes now a little higher, this is where the problem comes. The big works have to be approved by somebody. So we have to be very careful that in giving big works and taking care of the wealthy, that we are not depriving the average Barbadian who wants to enjoy the beach, the sun, the coconut trees and so on. They're not being deprived of our beautiful Barbados. Barbados for Barbadians first, and then for others.
The way you're talking about that now, it reminds me, makes me think about all these structures that are going up, that are blocking your views of the sea. I went around the island last week, and I started to say to myself, when I was younger, and I go driving all around Barbados, there were so many windows to the sea that you looked and enjoyed, especially going on the west coast. But now lots of structures are going up, so your windows to the sea are getting smaller.
Yes, they're becoming boreholes.
Yes.
No, we've lost Six Fence Bay. That's gone. We've lost Teacup and Saucer. on the East Coast, that's gone. We have lost a whole town. There's no longer that's been divested. I was told that Oistins is on that same trajectory. Bay Street, there's a plan for Bay Street that would change. Now we have the White House and we have number 10 in the UK. They're iconic, but yet we are hearing that our local Prime Minister's office will be being used for another role. And as we go all around Barbados, we're seeing these treasures of Barbados being divested in a very narrow window of time. This is really only happened in the last couple of years, really and truly. So we've lost some of our most iconic locations around the island, whole town, 6 minutes. I mean, and Barbadians are complaining and saying, "What are you doing? Stop, stop, stop."
And on that point, I want to ask you about River Bay.
Oh dear. Yes, yes.
You know, since I saw the story appeared in the newspaper, a lot of people I've talked to thought that the government owned River Bay. I thought that. Did
I did.
you?
Yeah, I did.
Are you
You know, many years ago, back in the 80s, listen, we thought that the East Coast was designated a national park. And having been designated a national park, I think Tom Adams was Prime Minister then, it's sometime early in the 80s. We felt that it was not going to be subject to this kind of development. If you're declaring it a national park,
Yes.
it is for the people of Barbados.
Yes.
Yes.
And lo and behold, in 2024, we discovered that building is going on within the national park. That entire area, because of its rustic beauty and its attraction to
there
Barbadians,
last week.
excursions, and so on, and it's being desecrated. What has happened to the national park? Well,
I do know. I mean,
That's a research for policy.
yeah, yes. And to your point, we have to be very careful. Well, it's just back to the Andrew Bino situation. Andrew Bino owns the land outright for over 25 years.
Yes.
It's his property. If you can get the 27 million that he's asking for,
2.7.
sorry, 2.7 million. My apologies, I said 27. 2.7 million US. I'm happy for him. No, he was gracious and generous enough to allow Barbados to traverse.
he was.
You know, I mean, a good gentleman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bino. I
Thank you
really
so much.
enjoyed
Yes, yes.
River Bay.
I had camps as a boy there,
Yes.
you know,
Picnics.
ISCF camps, picnics.
If you want to clear your head, just
Yeah,
right
if you want to
River
meet
Bay.
God, you go on the bluff there,
Yes.
just meditate, you know.
Yes.
So we had the
So
privilege and
answer,
the beauty
answer.
of that location.
Oh,
No.
that answer.
I'm
that's
hoping
Friday.
it's probably yes, River Bay is probably owned by Mr. Bino, and I'm hoping that with this potential purchase, that consideration is given for Barbadians by the government to use some of these funds they have to secure a treasure like River Bay for us, because our children and our grandchildren must be able to experience some of
What we experience.
what we experienced.
But what did we experience? You know, I had an idea that we should have, or I should have, some sort of program with people calling in and talking about what my River Bay experience.
My
Because
River
I'm
Bay.
sure all of us have an experience of excursions, bus
Yes,
excursions and everything.
Camps.
Yes.
Yes.
But I have a question for you that came in on WhatsApp. Under the LP government, how will we assist those that are trying to make a living on the beach as against the big developments? How do we strike a balance between the two?
Yes. Well, my view of this is this. You must be able to marry development with the parochial living and life and so on. There must be that balance,
With the communities
that harmony,
surround
yes,
them.
I mean, Opposition Leader today, Ralph spoke today about the passing into Michael East and seeing tourists at a bar and enjoying a
Yes.
village setting.
Yes.
So he's talking about the importance of community tourism
Yes.
as an initiative that should be driven. I mean, it happens in Oistins, in his constituency. And I'm telling you that this is what people are looking for. When I go to, tourists are looking for this. When I go to Ghana or to Dubai or to Ecuador or some of these other countries I've been to, I look for the small shops and the things that are intrinsic to that country.
Yes.
Barbados has a lot of that.
Yes.
And we should really look to weave the Barbadian culture experience into development, and thereby keeping the two together, getting that beautiful merger.
The unsanitized
The
culture.
unsanitized, I love it. So you don't be ashamed of breadfruit and Big Star, and it is part of who we are.
Yes.
Roasting the breadfruit and so on. I think this is what people are looking for, and the more that we turn Barbados into a concrete jungle, is the less I think people would come here, and people would reject Barbados as a beautiful pearl to come to.
And before, Paul, I let Melissa ask her question. As I was driving here this evening and passing down the back there where the immigration department is,
Yes.
and I looked to my left, and all that space is clear.
Yes.
And I said, oh, how beautiful it would be if we just had that window.
Yes. Yes. It's a lookout.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Unoccluded.
But that will not be. Ask your question.
We have a question from online. This is for Paul. What kind of legislation exists to control the erection of bunk boulders? How can it be controlled rather than arbitrary setup?
Okay. My understanding from my reading, and I'm not a lawyer, but I do read English, and from my reading of it, it appears that the legislation sets out very clearly where structures can go, how far away from the water's edge you can build, what structures can be erected, and how far away. These things all exist.
Yes, we do.
Now, our issue in Barbados is never a case of not having laws. I think the biggest challenge that we have most of the time is the execution of those laws. So we have seatbelt laws and nobody wears seatbelts. We have cell phone laws, but everybody's on the cell phone. And so the same thing applies to the beach. Who polices the beach? Who's responsible? And the persons responsible, are they doing their job? Is there surveillance to say, well, sir, your boundary wall is too far out. Your music is too loud, whatever. But we have to. This is about management, and a beach is a very valuable asset. It has a lot of intrinsic value, and if it is so expensive, and if tourism is such a critical thing to us, we should be spending money to make sure that we can manage it. And so I'm suggesting that more attention needs to be somebody with testicular fortitude that can tell Bill Gates or somebody, you cannot build there. You must have those people. Somebody that can say that must not happen.
But outside of this, there are laws, so you don't need anybody with testicular fortitude, really. You just need enforcement of the legislation that is already in place.
Correct.
You have another question?
Yeah, we do. All right, this question is for Ralph. How can we prevent this administration from selling off our precious coastlands?
Social and public pressure. You have to understand that these lands are private lands, and you can't really prevent John Brown from selling his private property to Mary Smith. You can prevent that only if you have something called aliens landholding legislation, which exists in Trinidad, and I know it exists in St. Lucia as well. That is where you pass a law to restrict the sale of land to foreign people. So that's something you have to do. Since we don't have that kind of legislation in Barbados, and that's quite deliberate, past governments have tended to take the development approach that you sell land to gain foreign exchange. I know that was a deliberate policy of a past government. I think Oinathi promoted that quite heavily, that if you sell your lands, people come in, purchase the lands, that's foreign exchange, they build expensive properties on them, and the money that comes in to build these expensive properties, that's also foreign currency, and that they live here and they contribute to the economy. So that the answer is we don't have alien land holdings legislation, I'm not sure that any government will do it now.
Mhm.
That would be quite revolutionary. Moral suasion, perhaps.
Mhm.
I don't know. Public pressure, perhaps. I don't know. But people don't like to live as expatriates in a country when they don't have social approval. And that public pressure is sometimes as strong as the law that you may not have. So public pressure goes a long way towards influencing people's conduct. So that if we say, look, the grounds that Paul was talking about, the public does not want you to put up these large boulders around your property to prevent people from sunbathing in front of your property. And if they know that, that public pressure will probably be enough to prevent them doing it. So public pressure, social pressure is a great thing to have, and it does influence people's behavior, because nobody wants to live in a country in which they're disliked, unwanted, in which they don't find approval. So social and public pressure, that's where the media comes in as an avenue for expressing, I beg your pardon, public disapproval. And where you don't have the established media in your corner, social media, extremely powerful. And nobody wants to live knowing that they are offending the local population with whom they're trying to integrate.
As you talked about this area land holdings, I remember there was some discussion many years ago, as you said,
Oh yes, it was
over the
topical.
years.
Yes.
But looking at what is happening in Barbados now with land,
Mhm.
don't you think that is something that a government should consider now?
How much of the West Coast is locally owned? I mean, I don't think anybody has really done an audit. You could go into the land tax department, BRA, and find out who owns the West Coast. But I think, Rose, I think that's a horse that may have bolted. It's a little late, but it's a little late in the day when the land is already owned by foreigners anyhow. Hotels, private houses, the luxury houses, the villas, which we dealt with today. All that, a lot of that is owned by foreign people.
But a lot of this land was previously owned by Barbadians.
You look at the West Coast with the chattel houses, I sometimes drive by and I'm amused that when I see a little chattel house, and I say, boy, that person is holding out. Because people have been known to come along and offer $5 million.
$5 million US.
For a channel?
Yes, and some people have said no.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yes, that is true, because I took a drive down there last week,
Mhm.
and you can see that there, these big buildings here,
Yes.
but just this little chattel house right there.
Yes, that's the beauty of Barbados, isn't it? The integration of the wealthy with the poor. A lot of them now, well, not a lot, a few of them you're noticing, they're buying the chattel and they're retaining the chattel
Feature.
Yes, and you have these little shops, little restaurants. There's a very popular restaurant down there somewhere in St. James. They've maintained the channel house, but it's supposed to be fairly high end
Yes.
as a restaurant, so that they're keeping the old aesthetic and integrating within that high end restaurants. Except that they're now owned by wealthy people and run by wealthy people, or run for the wealthy people. But Paul did not. He was too modest to tell you that a large part of his constituency is coastal, so that he speaks with authority. I think his constituency runs from by Jordan, Wabalodge,
From
Prospect
down the way up to Trent. All of hotels.
So a lot of his constituency is coastal. So he comes with an instant political interest in the coastline.
Okay. So what else is on your mind?
What? Oh, Paul or me?
Paul first.
Oh,
What else concerns you?
I am just getting so excited about the wonderful things that are happening in the Democratic Party. I'm fascinated with the fact that we are giving people hope. I look at the approach that we're taking to the fisher folk and to other persons that are concerned, and some of the farmers and so on. I'm really beginning to listen to them and to fight for them. I think Barbadians are looking for hope.
You sound like a former prime minister who said that to me, that Barbadians need hope.
Barbadians need hope.
And I think so, as I was mentioning when I was talking to Felicia and Nathaniel, that there's this, people are facing so many challenges,
Yes.
but they don't want to come and talk to you or talk publicly about them.
Yes.
But if they see you in the supermarket, in the gas station, wherever, they will come and say, boy, God, it's hard. They don't, they say it's rough. That's what they
Really
use.
rough, yeah.
It's rough, the term is rough.
And they will unburden themselves on
Yeah.
you know?
So
Yes.
it's good that honest voices are being heard
Yes.
to give people hope.
Yes, indeed. And we want to do more of that as we go forward for 2025, where the party is really trying to show to give suggestions as to how Barbadians could be taking up this pain that they're currently in. Because a lot of Barbadians are feeling a lot of pain. I mean, 37 new taxes, a lot of taxes, you know. And I heard somebody the other day say, you're going to raise the bus fare again? And everybody started to panic because they say, oh, no, we can't have anymore, you know. We were going to Christmas now, and people are saying, you know, what type of Christmas will I have? But I believe that we have resourceful people in Barbados. I think that the Democratic Labour Party has always had contributed the most of any party to how Barbadians live. NIS, free education, giving women rights, you know, in terms of marriage, schools, sixth form schools, school meals, you name it.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm sure Ralph would be able to commiserate
Yes.
when the DLP introduced that school book scheme for the schools.
Yes.
I remember my parents were breathing a sigh
Relieved.
Oh, yes.
because books were very expensive. And in those days, my parents, your parents, understood the value of education for us.
That's right. Yes.
So they made sure that we had books.
Yes.
But when Errol Barra came along and said, no, you ain't gotta buy the books no more, carry, I can't remember, it was $25 or something like that. And your child will get all of the books.
And it continues to this day.
Yes.
Yes.
That's correct.
Free education, free healthcare. You know, I tell people all the time. People say, "Why you talk about Elbar? Democratic person, Elbar? You always talk about Elbar." But I would like to say, the vision of Elbar lives on,
Correct.
which it has never died, and it will never die. He always attempted to take Barbadians off of dependency and off the nipple, I call it, and try to make them self-sufficient and to raise the bar, to expand the middle class just by giving free education to Barbadians.
Yes,
The middle class of Barbados exploded.
yes.
That is the Democratic Labour Party.
But you and I
Yes.
have to keep that vision alive
Yes.
to our children.
Precisely.
To let them know
Precisely.
you are here because of Errol Barrow.
Yes.
And that free secondary education you talked about.
Yes, yes.
It's very, very important.
He spoke about, he said, I would like one day not to see my children become doctors and so on. He said, he wants to go to the moon. You know, and in 2024, Elon Musk is doing that now. But back then, this is what everybody was talking about. This man is a visionary. And I think that when you go back to his principles and the things that he purported as a prime minister, he really wanted Barbadians to stand on their own 2 feet. This thing, I sometimes feel for my very good friend, he's my friend, Kurt Humphrey. Kurt has one of the hardest ministries of any minister in government. He is getting so much pressure to feed Barbadians and to take care of them because of the hardship that they're going through. It's probably one of the toughest ministries that there is. Because more and more Barbadians are wanting more.
We're talking about welfare.
Welfare.
Well, they should
Yes.
allocate more money to welfare
Yes.
and less to the prime minister for
I
traveling the
agree,
world.
I
She's
agree.
out the country now.
Yes, the people
And you
grow-
cannot justify
You can't justify it.
political administration in which the prime minister's office is receiving more money than a welfare department. One person's office is receiving millions of dollars to accommodate high-class travel, not on commercial airlines, but in private jets. I believe she's somewhere in the Middle East now, and the public needs to hear these things.
Yes.
And the public needs to understand that taxpayers' dollars are being spent for a government, a cabinet to luxuriate in the skies while people are on the ground suffering.
Yes.
And that's what we need to be telling Barbadians.
Yes.
And Paul, you just referred to fisheries. Look, technology is an amazing thing, Rose, and Derek has joined us. Today, when I sat down, after I spoke in Parliament in defense of the fisher folk, they came there to talk about underwater heritage and these fancy topics.
Yes.
But within the legislation, they mentioned the rights of the fishing community.
Yes.
After I sat down, after I spoke and I sat, I went to my phone and a member of the fisher folk community who has minor, I wish I could call her name. Her initials are GP.
Yes.
GP.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And she wrote to me to say that somebody was not telling the truth. She was writing to me about you want to see it, Rose? It wouldn't go on camera, but don't read it because I don't want to defame anybody. But she wrote to me to say that what the government was representing what the government was representing in Parliament was not true. That the government initially offered them, Rose, $1,500 a month for 3 months. And the government has now changed that. Vendors in this country, in the aftermath of the devastation of the fishing industry, those vendors were offered $1,500 over a period of 3 months, September, October, November, through Derek.
Yes.
They subsequently came back after they refused or failed, whichever. They have not paid a lot of them. And they have now written a letter to them saying, oh, we're going to give you $1,500 as a one-off payment.
Makes no sense.
So you promise people $4,500 and then come later and tell them, oh, we can only give you $1,500. The 3 months is for the boat owners and the captains and the fishermen. So for some reason, you're discriminating against the vendors, the people who distribute the fish to Barbadian people. And the point I was making was, why is it so difficult for you to give a few hundred vendors $1,500? Because, Rose, a lot of them, they have not paid it yet. And Christmas is around the corner. They simply have not paid it. They're telling you all kinds of nonsense. Oh, they haven't filled out the forms. They can't fill out the forms. They haven't provided the TAMIS number. They haven't provided bank account numbers. That is not true. Derek, it's not true.
Not true, definitely.
Derek has been dealing with them on a daily basis. And somebody in the system is lying on the vendors. I have frustrated them. I have a constituent, a fisherman, who has been knocking on the doors of that fisheries department across the road. We're down here on 8th Street. He has been down there every week, sometimes every other day. And they're not paying the man. They're telling him all kinds of nonsense about a machine broke down. And the point I was making was that you are reluctant as a government to give $1,500 measly dollars. You're making people jump through hoops to get $1,500. Yet, if a man owns a big multi-million-dollar villa, you can give him concessions. I was so tired earlier, but I've gotten over my fatigue. A concession is where government concedes that if a person owes the government money, the government will forego, will give them a break in Derek's language. Yeah. So we as taxpayers, we are sacrificing millions of dollars that we should be collecting from multimillionaires. We should be collecting those taxes from them, but we are forgiving them. Yet, in relation to fisher folk, you can't give them $1,500 measly dollars. And even some of the boat owners and some of the captains and some of the fishermen, they haven't paid them rolls. They paid some. And I asked the question today, and I don't need the protection of Parliament to ask it here. I asked them in Parliament today if the people who got paid were dancing on the right floor at Foundation School, or if they were sitting on the right benches at Foundation School. That is what this country has become. This country has become a country of partisan political discrimination, where you take up a whole set of people called fisher folk, and you're paying some, and others you're disadvantaging. You're trying to control people's behavior. Perhaps at the polling booth when the time comes, you're going to reward some, and you're victimizing some. And that's what I was complaining about, the difference in treatment accorded or extended to fisher folk.
Yes.
And there's different treatment extended to millionaires. Rose, in response to what I was told by a minister who got it, oh, you can't compare the two. You're talking about apples and oranges.
Yes.
So that's what
Apples and oranges.
that is what I was going to ask you about.
You are talking about two sectors, a hotel sector, and more specifically, a very narrow population of villa owners, not chattel house owners, Paul.
That's right.
People who own villas, the wealthy. And I am making a comparison against lowly fisher folk. I beg your pardon for calling them that, but they're socially lowly fisher folk. And a senior government minister gets up and tells me I can't make a comparison. I'm talking apples and oranges, so I want to know who are the apples and who are the oranges. And I told them that a good salad normally has both apples and oranges in it.
That's great.
Yeah, but the government today admitted that they are according different treatment to different people based on their stations in life. That is what this country has become. This country has become a place in which poor people promise 3 payments of $1,500, cannot get it. And when they try hard to get it, they have to come to Derek. And Mr. Franklin will not mind, Derek, that I will say here that we have hired the services of Mr. Caswell Franklin to help us, to help the fisher folk people. Caswell is the head of a trade union. We have had to go as far as that. I have a fisher folk person from my constituency who has had to resign from her job as a vendor to take another job. And the government still walking around believing that they're popular after doing all these things to people in broad daylight. That people have to run across there by fisheries 3-4 days a week trying to get $1,500, and then they're going into Parliament telling the public, oh, they haven't filled out forms. Presumably they can't write. That's what they're telling the public. The contempt that they have for people. And I keep asking Rose every week, I'm not going to allow it to go away. Because, you know, some people believe, oh, this is not a popular cause. They're only fisher folk people. That's the view. That's the social. That's how we stereotype some people. Oh, they're not entitled. I see the fellas increase the price of coconut water yesterday. And people gone into rebellion. The same people that go in supermarkets and seeing the price easing up every day, and a coconut man says, well, I want a few coppers too, because that was my grandmother's word, your grandmother's word, a few coppers, a few more coppers. And people gone into rebellion who they are, that they want to increase their prices, but we in the supermarket every day quietly complaining that the price is going up. Yeah, and these are the examples of how we discriminate every day. So that, Derek, the fisher folk fight will not go away.
No, it can't.
They'll not go away. They have to do what must be done to meet the justice of the cause.
Morally right.
We are morally right.
But you, Derek,
Morally right.
Derek has been dealing with them every day. He says they're here every day. You got to be running over the
Yes.
street there.
I was down today. I went to the market today to find out if they have any others got money. And they said they're receiving statements that the money has been put on their accounts. But when they go over to the account,
Nothing.
there's no money.
Nothing.
So
Running around the people.
there's some disconnect here. Something is happening.
And the minister said they hired someone to follow the forms.
I'm a bit confused. I don't
The
understand.
minister said so on the television today.
That they're hiring someone.
They hired someone
To help
follow
them
the
fill out the
forms.
forms.
Well, what's on your mind today, Derek?
I am a little concerned though about the lack of focus on young people. It's a historical fact that the government environmental party finds every excuse not to focus directly on young people in a positive way. And they can go back to the 70s and 80s. But I just want to stick to the present and then maybe more a little from the past. As I speak to you, it worries me that there's no national youth policy. And my information is that the young man who represents the city made a point in the House of Assembly that the Prime Minister doesn't want a national youth policy. And my information is that UNICEF provided the government of Barbados with a few $100,000 to develop a national youth policy, and that the process has been engaged and the document prepared, but it sits in the cabinet of a senior or former senior minister not to come to the public. And we saying all this to say is that we have a program called the Advanced
Youth Corps.
Youth Corps. Used to be known as the Barbados Service.
Yeah.
And the reason why that name was chosen was because it was youth giving service. That's the aim of the program. So youth to give service. But the name was changed to Corps, and I don't know what was the thinking behind it. But it bothers me because those young people, the program started at Grisette's in a community center. And we moved down to St. Lucie and refurbished the complex. And then the government of India closed it and put the prison down there through the youth service out. And took them up to Christchurch, up in the corner, we call it Paragon. But they stayed at the Paragon until the Democratic Party then decided they was going to build a home. They were going to build a home for the youth service. And that building started in 2000, and I think it was about 14. And this is now 2024. It's still unfinished. And we have a group of the young people in this community center, another group in another community center, another group walking all over the place. And in the meantime, we spent almost $1 million refurbishing a complex in Eagles Farm. Almost $1 million. The old school that St. Leonard's.
St. Leonard's,
St. Leonard's, yes. And the Canadian government has given us back in about 1991, 92, about $250,000 to bring it up to state because it had run down. And we spent some money on it, and we developed a stage where the facility at Deacons did computer.
I remember that.
It did carpentry. It did plumbing, electrical installation. There was a facility for boxing, karate, a gym, table tennis, road tennis, a choir.
So what happened to all of this?
2019, the government of the day closed it down, shut the program down, and sent home the staff. Reason? Only God knows. Now, last month, I'm told that the building has been turned over now to Youth and Community Development. And I received a telephone call asking if I can help them locate the plans that so they don't have to go and do over a fresh set of plans. So I refer them to the Urban Development Commission because I believe they should be on file. But after closing the place down for 4 years, you now have to find, I said, I don't want to guess, but I know it has to be close to $500,000 to get that place ready again. In the interim, we planted 100 banana and fig trees along the water canal. They sent about a bucket and bulldozed all of them, saying that they heard that people were planting marijuana between them. But if you know got marijuana in the street, you got marijuana in the street, and somebody growing marijuana and you bulldoze the marijuana, that doesn't make sense to me. You have to control it.
Tell Rose about the BDS sports program about which you know best speak so highly.
You know, that you see, when I make a general comment, these people care nothing about youth development. People think that I am being nasty, politically nasty. But the evidence always is there. The Barbados Defense Force program was an opportunity to get young men and young women, want to make that point, into organized discipline sports.
So that doesn't exist anymore?
No, it closed down.
You know best
Closed down.
credits the BDS sports program
But
for its rise to West Indies.
Remember, we had another fast baller guy, Black Wolf, who went in that program and came up and made the Barbados team. He had an injury and stuff, but that program produced lots of young people and footballers as well.
That's right. They had an excellent football
Footballers
team.
as well.
Yeah.
And the government cannot find the money to continue a program that keeps young people focused, direct, physically fit, coordinated. They do more than just cricket and football and so on, you know. They do personal development, they do linguistics.
You're actually living in
Yes.
like a soldier.
And it's fine, let's shut it down.
But you find how much money it was to do the football competition that ended a few weeks ago?
That must be about $1 million. What was $1 million?
And it started, ended, what else?
And what is the follow up?
Precise.
What is the follow up?
Sorry, Rose, I interrupted you.
No, when I hear about all of these things that Derek is talking about that was done under a DLP administration, I think to myself, when I look around, drive around some of these communities, I see all these young fellas sitting down, which I think idly on their phones. I say, young people in Barbados, government has to find meaningful programs that would interest these young men.
It's interesting that you make that observation because the government about early last year started talking about mini stadium.
That's a joke. Yeah.
And I took deliberate effort to drive around Barbados to see the progress. What I have seen now is some fencing. Somebody's making a killing
Oh, yeah.
out of the
Oh, yeah.
fences.
Those fences are expensive.
Some are 10 feet high.
Yeah.
10 feet high. And the national stadium was supposed to have started April, July, September, but now I'm hearing some of them in April again. That is predominantly used by young people. Young people, especially football and cycling. The cycling is finished now. But the point I'm making here, I go to Deacons, where I grew up. And between 4 and 6 o'clock, there's not a single boy on that pass.
Is that because the boys are home?
No, I think it's more than that.
Why is it? Why?
I think there's part of the problem is that, which I believe we spoke about, is that there are a number of programs that the youth are not aware of. And also that when you have programs that are actually making the positive impacts on young persons, it's removed. Or if it's implemented, nobody looks at the monitoring and evaluation of it. How does it impact young persons? There is a dire need for mentoring of young men in our society. And this is where the mentoring comes in. We speak about young persons and crime and violence, but we don't have the kinds of intervention that is needed for them. So it's one thing, and I started with the idea that today's World Human Rights Day, we have to start speaking of youth rights, that youth have that fundamental rights, just like any other rights, species rights, and every other person. But the kinds of emphasis and the funding that government, especially this government and this administration, what it does for young persons is a detriment to our society. Because what it says is that those same young persons, what would happen to them in the next 10 to 20 years if they do not have the skills that is required, if they do not have the kinds of intervention that is required. So while we're discussing the issue that they're perhaps on the phone, looking at TikTok or whatever that it is, what kinds of interventions that we have for those young persons? They are human beings just like us. They have dreams and they have goals. I believe that most young persons do not just want to sit on the block all day. They want to do something, but this government is more interested in more other areas, the fitting and the glamour and all of those things that does not produce a kind of Barbadian that we want to see, the kind of productive Barbadian that we want to see that contributes meaningfully to our society. So we cannot forget our young persons.
No, well, I think the government, 2018, they was still at urban. The government started to do something called a block program.
Oh, yes.
And went on some people's land and put down buildings, and next minute the people called for the land and knocked down buildings. So the government took the position, they're not coming into the community centers, so we can build some blocks up there. But that doesn't make sense. If you have a youth facility, it can't be the same facility you had in 1960 and 1980. You gotta get modern.
Yes.
You gotta put the same games that they want to play on their phone inside the center. All the them there, the TikTok, they get the TikTok tools and active in the center. And got competitions between them using the TikTok who can do the funniest talk.
Young people laughing at you. Say TikTok.
Don't laugh because they will say you're the old man.
But I mind you mind.
So I say he's not no old man. You call him out. He's not no old man. So that's what they say. TikTok.
But get some customer TikTok. But the point is, get the games, get whatever the young people are attracted to into the community centers. I always remember that I complained for the last 40 years that there is not one community center with a pool table.
The community centers, I don't think have
Not
anything.
one community center in Barbados with a pool table. And pool is an art game and that people can make a living out of. And the community centers got him what got in?
So you are advocating now for greater use of these community centers that I see all around, because there's a nice one in Blades Hill.
Yes.
And there's a nice one going up on Bay Street.
Mhm.
Yeah, by London Board.
Okay.
Well,
I was
based on the
wondering
drawings.
what that
Yes,
was,
that's-
okay.
You see, yeah, but putting the community centers and not including activities and facilities that young people can make use of.
Yes.
In order for a young 16 or 15-year-old young man to learn to play pool, he has to go in a ram shop.
That's true.
That's the only way he can learn to play pool.
And that becomes his community center.
Of course, and therefore he's not going to go in the community center, put pool tables into the community centers and let the young people have a competition between schools, have a competition between communities in pool. I watched pool on ESPN.
This is what?
£150,000 the prize money. And you want to tell me we can't find for this? We got some Suki games.
And it's a game.
Yes, we have some Suki games. Let's not only think lofty, but think smart. I'm certain if we run a youth competition in pool, quickly we can start to see talent and stars.
There are that many young people playing it?
No, where they can play.
Oh, they're really interested in it.
Of course, once you got a ball and a young man can want to play, and they're gonna learn new tricks. And I watched a pool game a couple of weeks ago with some older men who can get the ball to bounce about and so on, and that will attract young people if they're exposed to it. I don't want to have to go out to cricket. We have. I was talking to the president of the cricket BCA today, and he was telling me that we won the under 13 and the 19. We won the women. Barbados won the 50 overs, and Barbados won the 40 games. And we're on top of the world.
Cricket has left the village and it's gone.
That's the point I'm coming. So what are we going to do in the schools? The nursery used to be the BCL. The BCL is down to about 16 teams.
Yeah.
16 teams. In 1968, there were 106 BCL teams in Barbados.
This lady's father was a BCL.
Oh, he was one of the better batsmen. She got grandson now to that plane. Yeah,
No,
he
not
has,
my
he has the
grandson, my
Wilfred Clark.
and nephew, he can bat a bit too. He met 2 knots last.
So yeah, this over said that this lady's father was the best batsman who never played for Barbados.
Like, if he was very, very close to it.
And they said he was probably better than Sir Everton.
Well, if I give you that story, he was the player the day that took Conrad played. And he didn't get leave from Mungay.
Yes, not
He
Sir.
didn't get work. He didn't get time off from Mungay. And Conrad turned out not to be 12th man.
So we are about cricketing royalty.
Well, yes, of course we are. And she had a better Ricky, who was a very good batsman.
Already?
Yeah. But the thing is, what the government, the Prime Minister made the Sir Frank Ware lecture sometime back.
Uh-huh.
Another public relations that's my view. And promised to get equal pay for the women as for the men, and people clap. Well, you don't know what she's thinking. I know. I think they're long. And then a big statement, and I'm going to make sure you get equal pay for the ladies.
This is the same speech where she watched the World Cup final at school aside.
Yeah. If you forget, Mr. Billy Miller wanted to do something at school, so she was dreaming.
Oh, I see.
She was dreaming. But the point is, cricket is our national sport. And we need to get some help in the schools.
Is it still there?
I don't know. It's the only.
I think it is. A lot of
There is one
the primary schools there, the youngsters there, cricket.
It has to be because there's no other sport. We come nearly last in football in the regional.
I think one of the things I want to add, I remember our spokesperson for sports, Dr. Don Marie, when she spoke about
Yes.
that we don't see sports as a career.
Right.
So we have all the students playing cricket, football at primary school, secondary, and then we don't see them at, at tertiary level where they can actually make a career out of sports. And we hear that quite a lot where sports can't pay you.
Mhm.
And so I think that we have to change that kind
There's
of
still that
mentality.
thinking?
Well, because not primarily because when you see young persons play, so you see them at primary school and they do very well, but what happens thereafter? They go back focusing primarily on academics. So I think even in the education system that we need to look at in terms of how sports can develop persons as a career. So even at the university, we do have the Academy of Sports where they actually go through. And I think it's a very important thing that we have to look at what sports can do for the individuals and provide the kinds of intervention as well as to show young persons that there is an actual career.
But we have to stop paying lip service.
Yes,
Yes,
yes, yes.
When I hear the officials talking about same thing that you're, it's just lip service. They don't believe
Even the Labour Party, the Labour Party. So
what they're saying. They're not
no,
convincing.
they don't.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch American sports and you see those colleges,
Oh,
I mean,
fanatical.
and it is a joy to be part of the sport, and it happens 11 below that and 11 below that.
Right.
If Harrison College playing law school a cricket match Saturday, you can't find 50 people because it is not generated within the school that playing cricket or football or netball important to your life.
The
And-
excitement is not created around it.
Right, and I'm saying we need to do more of that. There should be rivalries between schools and everything.
There used to be many
That's what I'm
years ago.
saying. We come in here, we used to get beat most of the times, but we have to come in here and an ongoing rivalry, But I mean, they had sixth form at the time when they were bigger than older than we were, but we still win every now and then. But when Harrison Collins loves a big fight,
Literally.
and therefore we have to create that interest.
So what would a DLP government do to create really meaningful programs for young people? Because this is what is required.
You have to take young people seriously.
Yes.
First
Yes.
of
And
all.
the first point, they gotta accept that they are critical.
Derek gave a whole litany of war.
Yeah.
Time in the lives of young people. We as parents are called to.
Some of us.
Because we tend to see sport as an interlude until you do something serious.
Right. It's true.
Parents used to see and still do music like that.
And that-
Yes.
The boy is good at the music, but
Let
let him do it for
They do it
3
for
years
fun.
until he gets serious.
Yeah.
So we don't see it as a career. We as parents tend to be at fault.
Yeah.
Our whole value systems,
Yes.
we want him to become,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
engineers.
And I think we need to get programs in the school that attract the kids to them. And then encourage the rivalry between schools and let them see the value of it.
Trinidad used to have, I don't know if they still do, but when I was studying in Trinidad, a football game between the high schools was a major event.
And
Now,
then-
why was it a major event? Because it was shown on TV.
Yes.
Jamaica has the same culture.
Culture,
Rivalry
yes,
sport is
yes.
shown on TV.
We've lost it.
So we haven't used the television
No,
to assist sports.
You know that Antigua would come to Barbados and play football and get me 16 love.
Back in the day.
Yeah. Dominica would come here and get 10 love. I know we can't even score a goal. I know it's our whole community life has changed. And I was having a discussion with a one of the directors of youth affairs in the region, and I was told that we need to lobby to have the Commonwealth Youth Program. Saying they're not going to come back here physically, but they need to get a focused person to concentrate on the region, and because we don't have a lot of interaction at the community development and the youth development areas, and that's the area that we're missing. Most of the people go to university, but that youth program, Commonwealth program, will focus on people directly working with young people, and we're working in communities and building out new ideas, new programs, new policies. We are not going to get that CYP in the region, in the area called Commonwealth Youth Program. It was located in Guyana, and it coordinated several activities in the region that get us focused on youth and development in the region. But we need a focused person from the Secretariat to concentrate on youth and community development. And I don't think that we can continue to separate youth from community development. I think the good days, that is where the twin was. Youth and community development were located in the same ministry, same director, same head, so that you could build the youth activities around a community. So.
But I think the other thing I think about as an older Barbadian is you're talking about the activities, but to me, activities now for many young people is events.
We build that culture. That's a culture.
The government is encouraging it.
That is a culture that has developed it, and I mean has concretized in the last 6 years. I mean everything.
They
Even
have,
the opening of schools these days. Now I know
yes, and that
So
was the time
terrible.
I asked the principal. I think I said this before. I asked the principal, "Well, why are you all persistent with this?" And I'm not going to relate the gender. The principal told me, "But it is a directive from the ministry that you must begin with this FET." And I'm so distressed when I see next year's agenda for
We can't have that.
regathering. Let's start very nicely. Let's start with St. Lucie. The theme is faith. And they go through the year and they come to our beloved St. Michael Derek.
Got their face.
And the theme is feeding and food. So we're going to end, we start the year with faith, virtual faith, and all these nice themes. But when we hit St. Michael, feeding and food, we release it now. We feeding. If, of course, maybe leading into the next election.
Probably.
If they decide to call it after that. But whenever they call it, we're ready. I say that already.
Yes.
But feeding and food, I'm distressed by that. That you are reducing an entire population to a cultural expression in which feeding is the focus.
Well, that's right. Only today I heard that there was some concern in the new, all new fashion. Pelican.
Oh,
There's some
Pelican.
problems.
That they seem to be focused now on only restaurants and
And
music
craft people.
and the craft people are being
Yes.
pushed into the background.
Yes, that's
And
right.
I think that it's something that
Literally pushed into the background.
background.
Near the back.
Yes, so we
And their places haven't been
and as a matter of fact, you really want the art and craft up front.
That's what it used to be.
Yes, where you can see it, and then you can have the fact in the back or you will hear it. You really
Precisely.
fact in the back.
I think that my observation over the years is that it seems to me that people are trying to cement this idea in Barbadians that our culture is only about fetting,
Revelry.
beads,
Yes.
and bikinis. But
Yes.
our culture is
The
much,
new
so much
Barbadians.
more than that. The crafts people, the work that they do, the visual artists. These people need to be celebrated and promoted as part of Barbadian heritage and culture. We have an identity.
And you know, Rose, when you do that, you're marginalizing the church. The church used to be central to our culture.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're going to go back to that now. I think we've lost that. And I think the church sometimes too is starting to blame because the church to me is not seen out in the communities like they were when I was a child.
Well,
The recitations.
if you have
on
an
Sundays.
administration in which everybody is afraid to express themselves, including church leaders, people are afraid. People are genuinely afraid in this country to
Yeah.
appear to be opposing the
Yes,
government,
yes.
even when that opposition
It's
is
real.
not a threat, an
It's real.
existential
It's
threat
real,
to the
right.
government. People are afraid. Oh, I don't want to say anything about the government. I don't want to say anything that appears to oppose the government. So it's an entire political culture in which there's obeisance to the government. Everything the government does is well done, and you're not supposed to oppose it.
But
And if you oppose it, well, you're under threat.
it makes me smile that every time a minister, whenever his own portfolio gets up and speak,
Prime
he
Minister.
got when I spoke to the prime minister, I've never witnessed that in any
It's
other
bad.
government. I have
really is bad.
never
It
witnessed
really is bad.
in any other government in the history of
But what
Bangladesh.
he's saying is so simplistic.
Yeah.
But you know, as the Prime Minister said, the road got to face.
I was speaking to the prime minister and
Yes,
she said
and
this,
she
she
said-
said this, and she said, I mean, come on, man. You are a minister responsible for the portfolio. It's your responsibility. You don't have to sit down on the prime minister's back. Get up and do the paperwork.
Coming back to our fisheries
Yeah, but
thing,
that's the same.
that's why no movement is being made. Because
Exactly.
The Prime Minister appears not to have intervened.
Yes.
No, and I think it's at this point where we are, and Rosemary spoke about our culture. I think it's important, and this is why we see in the youth, because they do not think they have the ground in that authentic identity, how what it is to be Barbadian. And so if you're teaching them this is what culture is about, it's obviously why they tend to gravitate to that kind of culture.
But if that is what is being promoted in the body policy makers,
Right.
that culture is about this fetid,
Yes.
because that's all you hear from these people.
Because I think it's easier to do that, because if you look at the reality, it's better to fet. Because every ministry, we're seeing what is happening in those ministries. Every ministry is at a detriment. It's, it's not from fisheries to agriculture to education. Every ministry in this government has failed. Every one of them. And so what you're saying is an overspill of what we're seeing right now in our society. So the fisher folk will continue to endure until this government recognizes that they have been incompetent in those various fields. So when we think about education, we're seeing what is happening every week. A school has to be closed down. The fisher folk have to come out. Agriculture, we just had all this shortage with food now, so these are, if you look at it, and it's probably why every minister has that responsibility to say, well, we have to see what the prime minister is saying, because every ministry at this point is a complete failure. And that is the reality. And so that they know that people are understanding that reality, so they're trying to create an illusion that if we fed enough, they may not see the reality before them. But I think the average Barbadian, right-thinking Barbadian, understand what is happening. So regardless of all the fetting that is occurring, people are feeling the pain and struggle in this country.
Yes.
And this is what we have to do as members of this party that represents the people, is to stand up and remind them that this society is not about partying and fetting.
So the
Yeah,
government
we
is
do.
masking
They're
and
masking
happiness
it.
with fetid.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have to show them what the realities are and to continue to advocate and agitate that the people deserve better and the fisher folk need their money.
Yes.
Yes.
Pay the people their money.
Derek, I knew.
Pay the people their money. And these are the
By the
issues.
time I went
Yeah.
to secondary school, I knew all about it. By heart.
Oh, yes,
Yes.
you had the choice. You had the choice.
Hi, and I'm glad you mentioned it.
School started with,
Yeah.
and we didn't have hymns ancient and modern. The teacher wrote it on the board.
On the board.
We wrote it in our exercise book, and we went home and learned it.
But you have to
Everywhere.
go
National
and learn
anthem.
it.
Of course, national anthem. the
And I'm
same thing.
glad you were talking
National
about that
pledge.
now as we begin to wind up.
Mhm.
People see me and say, who is Ralph? Who Ralph Thornton? So we just see this image of him in the parliament, in the cutting thrust of debate, but we want to see more of Ralph.
Typical Barbadian boy. Rub out barefoot all about grisettes.
I know about that.
Big dunks. Get licks from my parents. Went to Wesley Hall School.
College. Wesley Hall College.
Wesley Hall. Derek and myself. Wesley Hall boys.
Yeah, you used to fight at school too.
With my size. I
But
used to fight verbally.
all right, but I tell people I used to hear about the Thorns before I even saw them, because you all seem to be very well known in the community.
There were a lot of us.
Right, but I always used to hear my parents talk about the Thorns and church. There was
Yes,
always
yes,
Thorns and
yes,
church, not
yes,
just by
yes,
Thorns
yes.
and church.
Mm.
I said, who these Thorns and church?
And when we were walking going down to the Q church, there
Yes.
through the bridge from
Yes.
home, that's about a mile.
Yes,
And sometimes you hear a voice, the doors coming down.
yes,
All the boys got all the same color shirt.
right,
My mother used to make the shirts on
Okay.
her machine at home.
okay,
Because every Barbadian home had a sewing
Of
machine.
course, yeah.
correct,
A
that
necky.
is true.
A necky.
Yes,
Yes, so nobody had
Or
what we
singer.
call ready-made clothes.
Yeah.
It's too
that
expensive.
that is true.
So your mom bought the cloth,
Mhm.
and you had to buy one large set of cloth.
Okay.
Everybody had
Cheaper.
the same color shirts.
So you used to have a new pants and a new shirt for Christmas
Oh,
now.
yes, at Christmas. Yeah.
You get the old school pants to wear home.
Tell people that the wardrobe of the typical Barbadian boy, school clothes, church clothes, and home clothes, which were the retired church clothes or
School clothes, yes.
It was as simple as sweet life.
I'm glad you said that. It was very simple and
Yes.
sweet. And what about you, Derek? Well, what about school? What about Christmas?
Well, I was always a Christmas baby. Because my mother would buy 2 English apples and cut them in ear.
Yes, yeah. But you know what that is? You know, as we used to call
She had a
them.
good night.
Yes. You know, at that time though, English apples used to have a scent. You used
Oh
to
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Christmas.
But now
Christmas.
you don't have any scent.
No, they don't.
When you open that thing,
Yes, yes.
You couldn't
retro
hide
counts,
English apples.
yeah, once a year too.
Yes, you only see them at
But-
Christmas time,
but like-
so on street.
Life has really changed because I used to go to Queen's Park Christmas morning.
Christmas morning.
My mother would give each of us 25 cents. Because it's a big lot of money.
Oh yeah, that's a lot of money.
And God Hill was 6 cents, 12 cents going, 12 cents coming. I mean, my brother Vincent got off on the God Hill bus,
What was the price of an English apple at that time?
10 cents.
10 cents. Okay.
We get on the bus and we went to God Hill. And we got off the bus to walk around. And then we can remember where we got off the bus.
Gone.
God Hill. The bus used to go up
So
to
you
God
went
Hill.
to God, you catch the bus,
St.
went to
John
God
or
Hill,
Christchurch?
Christchurch.
and then you forget where you get
Because
off.
we went walking.
Christmas morning.
Christmas morning, because we know we won't get a chance to go out too far in those days.
Uh-huh.
But we had sufficient money, so we got on by this bus.
Your Christmas clothes.
Yes, of course. And we asked the guy put us wrong. So we told us no, standing at the road crying. Gentleman come and said, "What's wrong, boys?" We told him we took us to the bus. Now we going home now. I telling my mother, no, he ain't telling my mother. But he don't go and telling Tony Austin. Tony, boy, you know, we nearly get lost today. My mother heard, boy, lashes. Harry told us, we never risk going anywhere again. Never. I mean, when they go 7? 7. We want a bus drive. You know, bus drive. Because most people get is a bus. We hardly pay a catch the bus to come into town.
This transport board bus.
You hardly catch the bus because we walk from Bridge Gap.
People still do a lot of walking.
We walk from Bridge Gap to town. We walk to Wesley Hall every morning. And then,
Oh yeah.
I was talking before it was 10, so I wasn't even going to foundation yet.
Streams of boys coming down.
So we walk down to school and walk home to school and run up behind donkey cart going home. And get home early.
I bought Phillips Steel Sweet.
Oh, the penny of that was.
Next
Penny is still
time.
sweet.
And that's
Penny and
correct.
break up biscuits.
Next time we're out of time, folks. We're so glad to have you watching and listening to us from wherever you are, especially our Barbadian audience. We know you enjoyed the DLP TV with honest voices for the people. See you next time.